Let's learn. Here we're learning. Let's learn. We're learning about Purim.
Yeah.
We're learning about Purim. And we're learning about Purim, that Purim was a time in exile. It's one of the holidays that are in the exile. There's all of the holidays in Judaism, happy holidays in Judaism are from the Torah, except for two of them. And those two holidays, unlike the others, are in exile. They're in the time of exile. All the other holidays center around the Holy Temple. The Jews would go 3 times a year on Passover, on Sukkot, and on Shavuot. They would go to the Holy Temple, and they had to bring sacrifices there and be happy. And these two holidays were not in the time of the temple, of the first temple anyway. And Purim was a holiday there was no temple at all. At least Hanukkah was in the time of the second temple. But nevertheless, it was a time of the second temple when the Jews were not ruling over Israel. They weren't ruling over the temple, at least temporarily. The holiday of Hanukkah happened in the middle of the second temple. But this happened between the first and the second temples, Purim. So Purim was a real time of darkness. And in fact, that was one of the reasons for the holiday. All the Jewish people went and participated in this big meal of Achashverosh. That's how the Megillah starts off with. Achashverosh made this huge 6-month-long meal, 180 days. And he made a big meal. And afterwards, he made a special meal just for the people living in this capital city of Shushan. And he invited all the Jews. That's how the Megillah starts off. And we've talked about this before. Why did he make this big meal? So according to the one opinion, was because now he knew that he was sure that according to his calculations that the Jews were going to be in exile for all time, and that the prophets were wrong, God forbid. And the prophets, Jeremiah said that the exile was going to be 70 years, according to his mistaken calculations, as and all of his astronomers and whatever his mathematicians, they all said that the 70 years had passed and the Jews are not going to get free. And he was very happy. Now that meant that no one would disturb his rulership. So he made a big party, which he's got a right to make a party for anything he wants to. But the Jews came. The Jews also believed it. And the Jews came, and therefore there was the whole tragedy of Purim. There was this terrible decree to destroy all the Jews in one day. And miraculously, the whole entire thing turned around. And Haman was hung. We learned about this yesterday. And after Haman was hung, and so Esther made a second request to the king. It says, Vatosef Esther, Esther continued, and she spoke in front of the king, King Achashverosh, Vatev Kabatis Chanan Lo, and she wept, and she wept, and she beseeched him to negate the decree of Haman Agagi and his thoughts that he wanted to destroy all of the Jews. Okay, so as we said before, the Megillah actually happened. There was actually a person called Achashverosh and Esther and Mordechai, and it really did happen between the first and the second temple. But it's one of the books of the Torah. And as one of the books of the Torah, it is an allegory for Hashem. And in fact, everything in the world is an allegory for Hashem. Everything that there is in the world is being created by God, and is being created by God with God's word. God's words are creating the world. Why words? Why doesn't God create it from his beams of light, or with his with his spirit, or with something else? Why word? Because words have meaning. And God created the whole world with words. It means that everything in the world has some sort of a message in it. Everything in the world. So, we're not like King Solomon. It says King Solomon could understand the speech of the birds and of the trees and everything like that. So we're not to that level. At least I'm not to that level. Maybe you could be, you are. But I'm not to that level. And most people that I know are also not to that level where they can understand exactly the meaning, what everything in the world is telling us. And also the message that they're telling us are not usual, day-to-day messages. It's not telling us, what's the best gas station to buy where it's lowest prices, or what's going to happen tomorrow, what's in the news. It's telling us deep messages about life. I don't know. Messages like this: how to love God more, how to appreciate God more, how to appreciate life more, how to appreciate the world more. Everything is telling us something. So, but the Torah for sure is giving us a message. So here we have the book of Esther is the only book that God's name does not appear. And of course, everything in the world is telling us a message about God. How much more so a book of the Bible? So it says, well, every time it says also in the even in the Talmud, every time it says the word Achashverosh, it's also a metaphor for God. I mean, you couldn't find a better metaphor than that. Achashverosh is a pretty bad guy, but nevertheless, everything in the world, even in the bad things, there is a message from God. Even if the message is don't do it, keep away from it. But still, everything has a message. So Achashverosh is a message about God. Is a metaphor. Is a metaphor. What do you want to call it? A synonym for God. A synonym for God. So it says the Rebbe, come on, how can you say something like that? That it says that Esther, she wept in front of his feet. She cried, she fell down in front of his feet. What, God has feet? Come on. God, I mean, okay, let's not take this metaphor too far. Okay, you want to say it's a metaphor for God, but God doesn't have any feet. What are you talking about? Oh, that's what you think. Yes, he does. What type of feet? We're going to see. That's the question is. How can it be that God has feet? What does it mean that she wept in front of him? God has no image of no person. Okay. So the Rebbe, now he has a question. I'm just going over what we learned. There's so much information here that it's not a waste of time to go over everything. It says that the pupils of the first Rebbe of Chabad, his pupils, they were all tremendous geniuses. They knew the Talmud, they knew the Torah, and they used to go over the Maimorim. I heard 500 times. Some said 300 times. If we go over it twice, it's a big thing. Because every time they would find something new and meaningful. So here we go. So the Rebbe says, this is written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, right? Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Chabad, like about 250 years ago. So he asked the question. In order to understand this thing about what it means that Esther, she fell before the feet of God, right? Achashverosh as a metaphor for God. So the Rebbe says, listen, how is it possible that when we pray, that we actually have an effect on God? How does this make any sense? What is prayer? How is it in the ability of a person to pray to God and to have some sort of an effect on God, right? We want Uncle Sam or whatever, Uncle Joe, he's sick in the hospital, we want him to get healthy. So we pray for him and it works. Right? How does it work? So you can say, well, it works because it just sends out these vibes, and it's positive vibrations all over. And that sort of gives an ambience in the world. That's okay. That's an explanation. That's definitely an explanation. But the Jewish people say that even though that's true, the fact is we're praying to God, according to that. So why pray to God? Let's just say, just a general, feeling, Uncle Joe should be healthy. Joe should be healthy. Just say it over. We're praying to God. God, please make this person healthy. Okay, now, of course, it depends on how you define God. The Jewish people are here to define God in a true way, a way that nobody else explained, that God creates everything. That's the lowest aspect of God. He creates everything. So it means that God is not a form. God creates all form. God is not, in a way you say, an existence. He creates all existence. He creates all being. He is not consciousness. He creates all consciousness. What does this mean? It means that God has no form whatsoever. Well, yeah, that's what that means. So how did Esther, when it says that she bowed down in front of his feet, and we said that means the feet of God. And we see in the Bible a lot of times that it said God speaks. The whole Bible is by Yomer Hashem. God speaks to Abraham. God speaks. God is speaking. and we see the hand of God, it was elevated, but right? But Yad Hashem, Romema, it says the Yamin Hashem, the right hand of God, the left hand of it. So what's going on? So it says, let's look at prayer. What is prayer? When the Jewish people pray, is they have an effect on God. And then they went into a whole thing about what is the Jewish soul. The Jewish soul, sometimes it can be revealed and sometimes it's concealed. When it's revealed, it's called Rachel. When it's called Rachel. When it's called Rachel, sometimes it's only revealed in very extreme circumstances, when the Jews are threatened with extinction, when they're like Haman came along, Hitler comes along, whatever, Achashverosh comes along, and he wants to, the God forbid, do bad to the Jews. It pressures the Jews. All of a sudden, is revealed their essence. In the time of the Inquisition, in the Crusades, there's no limit, right? The expulsions, expelled from Spain, expelled from Portugal, expelled from the Jews, and they always took the Torah with them, etc. So there's two times. When the Jews are, their Judaism is revealed, that's Rachel. And sometimes that can be in terrible situations. Like we said, like a rose among the thorns. And sometimes it can be totally concealed. And then it's called Esther. It says, okay, that's what we got up to. And that's called concealment. That's also called nighttime. Nighttime. And it's also even more, nighttime is the time when nothing is revealed, right? But some, even more, it's called that night, Alayla Hahu. In other words, it's nighttime, and you don't even know that it's nighttime. It's a Haster Aster. The Rebbe has this beautiful, very touching speech that he gave, a little where he cries. And he says it's like the example, the Arizal, he brings Shem Tov, why does God hide himself from us? He says it's like a father that he hides himself from his son because he wants his son to look for him. The father likes it, daddy, right? It's peekaboo, here I am. He says, what happens if the father hides himself a little bit too much? And the son is looking for him, can't find him. Looking for him another day, can't find him. And finally, either his son gives up totally, or he just forgets about his father totally. He says, that's what God is doing to the Jewish people. He's hiding himself. We've looked for him yesterday. The king wants us to look for him. We've looked for him yesterday. We looked for him the day before. Look for him. And they already started weeping and crying. And he says, what does the king want from us? We've already been looking and searching. And there's Jews that don't even know that there's something to search for. So they stop searching. They don't even know there is anything to look for. And that's called double concealment. Haster aster, called a double concealment. So says the Rebbe, the fact of the matter is that God is everywhere. God fills the heavens and the earth. One place it says the heavens and the earth I fill. Another place it says that just a ray of God fills the world. That's where we are. Shnei Amemet, both of them are true. God fills the world himself, his essence, or God fills the world, just a ray of godliness. Well, you have to say it must be God's essence because there's nothing except for God. All there is God. That's all there is. And God creates everything from nothing. So there's nothing. The world is nothing. The world can't conceal God. The world is nothing. So obviously it must be God's essence is everywhere. On the other hand, we see that there is a world. Here it is. Not only that, it says in the Bible that there's a world. It says that God created the world. How can you say the world is nothing? It says clearly that God created the world. There's all these laws about what we have to do with the world, right? You can't steal, the 10 Commandments. Don't steal, don't kill, don't rape, don't this. Why? If there's no world, who cares what I do? It says, no, so there must be a world. So how does the world exist? It says the world is just a ray of godliness. So once again, I don't understand. Is the essence of God everywhere, or is it just a ray of God? What's happening? So it says both of them are true. But the heavens and the earth, God himself fills. Rak, only the trouble is that it's true, there's nothing but God creates the heavens and the earth in such a way, Rak, haguf hu mastir. The world itself, especially our body and our personality, that's part of the world, it's part of the creation. That conceals. It conceals God's essence. But what it says, Malo Kala Oretz Kabodo, this is abbreviation, Malo Kala Oretz Kabodo, that one says that the world is only filled with God's a ray of godliness. This is the zivo, this pashtuso. This is how God is like a ray and a branch of godliness in order to keep the worlds alive. This we can sort of understand. That everything in front of God is like nothing. Right? Suddenly a person that lives his life, all of a sudden his conscience bothers him. Where did that come from? What conscience? What happened? Oh, my conscience. He stole money. He killed, as a famous novel, the Dostoevsky novel. I read it so long ago. Crime and Punishment. The guy just does a crime. If I remember, remind me if I made a mistake. He commits a crime because he wants to commit it. He just wants to do it. So he kills some old lady or something like that, and kills her, and then his conscience starts bothering him. He gets away with the crime. He's free. Nobody's going to catch him in a million years. All of a sudden, his conscience won't let him alone. He can't run away from his conscience, right? All of a sudden, he starts to think, maybe there is absolute right and wrong. Maybe something happened over here. That's called a ray of godliness. A ray of godliness. All of a sudden, he feels, well, maybe there's something absolute in the world. He says, and you start to think, what's keeping the whole world alive? Here you see things are alive, right? That you see that things are being created by God. That you don't see. But you see that things are alive. They're alive. Where did they get life from? Oh, maybe there's something that's enlivening them. Maybe it's a power that's enlivening them, some sort of a spiritual power. But where did the spirit come from? Where did the spiritual life? All of a sudden, maybe comes to the conclusion, wait, maybe there's God. Everything in front of God is nothing. Even though there is darkness. What do you mean it's darkness? We are in the time of exile. We don't see any godliness. 99% of the people say there's no such thing as God. But all of a sudden, a person realizes, maybe all of them are wrong. Maybe there is. Maybe God is really creating me. It could be. Nevertheless, you can still see this ray of godliness in the world. That means like opposite me, right in front of me. Because of godel emuna, because if you have all of a sudden faith, shiamin be'amuna shlema, that you can believe with true faith, zachav Torah, pure and what do you say, clean, clear and pure. Ki'ilu ein of rose mamash. All of a sudden you look and you realize, wow, the whole world is a big miracle. The whole thing is a big miracle, right? All these trees are alive and the wind is blowing and it's all happening from God is orchestrating this whole amazing concert that's going around the whole world. Oh, suddenly you see, what do you see? You see a ray of godliness. It says, but how do you see this? Right? How are you going to see this? Says the Rebbe, in order to refine yourself and purify yourself, that you see this is very nice to read about it. But when you read about it, it's just in your imagination, right? Like you read a book about whatever it is, a book, some sort of a novel, Moby Dick or something like that. You're not riding on a boat and looking for whales, but in your mind, it's there. Same thing when we read about all this stuff about God and it's creating the world and so on, amazing. So that's nice because it's in our mind. But to really see it and to really feel it, you have to have a really pure. A really pure personality and consciousness. Now, here we have something relegated only for the Jews. The Jews, says when the Jews, they were enslaved in Egypt. No one else was enslaved in Egypt. The Jews were. And it says when they were there, the Jews worked at chomer bilavanim, in cement and bricks. Just like it was in Eretz Yisrael, so we have to do now. The Jews suffered in Egypt for 210 years in Egypt. They had to work in chomer bilavanim, with cement and with bricks. And similarly, there has to be chomer and bricks. We also have to do the same thing. Chomer, this is a kol v'chomer. Lavanim is libun hilchos. We did this yesterday. These are two different aspects of learning the Talmud. The kol of basada, anything, all of the work in the field, that's breita. Breita means outside, bar, outside. Working in the field. That's what the Jews did in Egypt. Okay, now let's just go into this a little bit. Really, anyone can recognize godliness. You can see godliness, how God is enlivening the world, etc. But the Jews have a special connection to God. That's what it says. I didn't create the world. It seems a little bit chauvinistic, and I agree that it is, but what can you do? I didn't write the Torah. I didn't create the world. That's the way God created it. And God created the world in such a way, and Jews have been denying this and running from it and trying to prove it's not true, but it's true. What can you do? The Jewish people are called the sons of God. Every Jew is called the son of God. The Tanya, in the second chapter of this book called the Tanya, he explains this. Here's the book, the Tanya. Here's the book. I mean, here you see the book, Tanya. Tanya, see? Tanya, if you read Hebrew. And in the second chapter, it explains this. What it means that the Jews are called the sons of God. And what it means that why the sons of God? Why not the light of God, the eyes of God, the sons of God? So he explains that a son has a special inner intimate connection with his father, and so do the Jews have with God. Now again, we have to just stress very strongly the Jews are the sons of God and they're chosen of God because the Jews are chosen to show the whole world that God is creating them and to bring the whole world to this intimate connection, that God is not just something you find in the church or someplace or a mosque, that God is really creating everyone everywhere. And that's why it says when Mashiach comes, there won't be any more religions. Everybody's going to stop all the religions and the churches and things like that, and they're just going to worship their creator. They're only the creator, not the creator and something else. And the only ones that are going to bring the world to do this, to show that all there is the creator, is the Jews. So the Jews have to feel it first. So how do the Jews feel this aspect of God? How do they do it? It says they have to refine themselves. That's what the whole idea of the Torah is. And as soon as a person accepts on himself the yoke of the Torah, then it says that they remove from him the yoke, the confusion of the world. But it says that anyone that removes from himself the yoke of the Torah, so all of a sudden the world comes confusing. The old Derech Eretz, it says the world starts to become a big burden for him and confuses him and becomes the ruler. He rules. He's in Egypt. He's a slave to the world. But even though that a person is working on other things, nevertheless, even though the world is ruling over him, but nevertheless he can come to a Laila Hazeh. Nevertheless, he can come to this level of the night. It's nighttime, but Hazeh revealed. How does he do that? Even though he doesn't learn Torah. He can't learn Torah. Nevertheless, every Jew can come to this level of revealing Hazeh, this godliness in the nighttime. How do you do that? And by that, to tell the whole world, there's hope. There's hope that God really is creating everyone, and God really wants everyone to go out of this selfishness, this confusion, this egotism that's destroying all of us. That's supposed to be the message of the Jews. And the Rebbe is bringing this message to all of us. But what about every Jew is supposed to be a messenger of God? How do you say a public servant? To serve the whole world and to bring them to the reality of how precious they are and how unique every human being is, how precious life is in general. That's called Halayla, even though it's nighttime, but Hazeh, this revealed. How can you do that? Ha'inyan is Sheshal HaKodesh Baruch Hu Me'olamot Elyon Ma Kol Gadir, that God asked from the upper worlds. God asks, right? It says that Mordechai gathered all these children, 22,000 children together, and they learned Torah. And God said, what is this voice that I hear? Heshivu him. This is the Kol Ben Israel. This is the voice of the Jewish people. That's what it says, the voice of the Jewish people. Now, little children were learning Torah. They don't really understand Torah. Mordechai was telling them what to say, and they were all learning. They were saying, how can it be that God asked the angels or whatever, what is that sound that I hear? And it says it was the children praying to God. What do you mean God asked? Hello, lefanav nigla. Everything is revealed in front of God. How can that possibly be? It's like a person looking at his finger and asking himself, what is this? What is that? There's something wrong with the person. Doesn't know it's his own finger. God knows everything what's going on. How did it that God asked, what is that sound coming up of the Jews praying? What is that sound? And they said, it's the Jews praying. The Jewish, just like a It says it's like a kid. He said, "What is this?" God said, "What is this sound of this baby goat?" So it's just like a baby goat, that he's crying after his mother, without any understanding or knowledge. So it was at that time. Without any understanding, without any contemplation, the Jews were just crying out, Machmas, because of Gadol, the great, because of the great Soratam, the great pain. Tzach libam, their hearts screamed out to God, the tremendous darkness that there was. Vayitzaku el Hashem, that they cried out to God, but tsar lehem, when it was painful to them. Vayishivu, and that's what the angels or whatever replied to God. Haim tzoakim, the Jewish people are crying. This is the Haim Vayishivu. Haim shetzaku, the Jewish people, they're the ones that are crying out, believe that, without any understanding. And this is above understanding. It's not similar to an animal crying out, which is without any knowledge, because animals don't have any potential to know anything. But human beings do have a potential to know, and they're screaming out above knowledge. What does it mean? The Jewish people in that time, in the time of Haman, the Jewish people were all invited to the meal of Achashverosh. The Jewish people were on a very high level as far as Torah goes. They only started writing down the Torah after the second temple was destroyed. They started writing down because people got spread around and they started forgetting, and etc. The early people that wrote down the Torah, they had the ability to raise the dead. It says that the people of the Great Assembly, right in the beginning of the first temple, right, they had the ability also to do the same thing. And the second temple, the men of the Great Assembly. Mordechai, Yehudi, was one of them. And they were all screaming out to God. Why were they screaming out? They were in a good situation. They were in the best of situations. All they had to do was just say, I'm not Jewish. Haman made a decree to kill all the Jews. All they had to say was 3 words, and there was no pressure, no problem, right? All the difficult, and no one was able to say it. There was not one Jew, even those Jews that they wanted to assimilate, they wanted to be part of, they agreed that Achashverosh was the ruler and that Moshiach was going to come and there was not going to be any second temple. They gave up, they went to the meal of Achashverosh. But nevertheless, all of a sudden, Haman said, I'm going to kill you because you're Jews. I'm going to kill all the Jews. And all of them said, well, I'm a Jew. I'm a Jew. I can't deny that I'm a Jew. Come on, you went to the big party, you had a good time. Good time I can have, I can deny one commandment, another commandment, but to deny that I'm a Jew, suddenly they weren't able to do it, right? If there was no pressure, of course they would say, what's the problem? I'll deny that I'm a Jew, no problem, right? No, I'll deny that I'm a Jew. You see, it used to be, I don't know if it's that way anymore, especially in America, you do mitzvah, go in the streets, in Chabad, we go in the streets and we ask people to put on tefillin. And usually Jews would never deny they're Jewish. You get all these Jews saying, no, I don't want to. What do you care? I'm not, right? You'd hear all these answers. Rarely would you hear anyone say, I'm not Jewish, right? I'm not Jewish. If your person was really not Jewish, he would say, I'm not Jewish, with a smile. No, I'm not Jewish, with a smile, right? You'd see a person say, somebody you ask, whatever, is a Mexican or somebody you think that, no, I'm not Jewish, with a smile. Usually, the Jews, the only ones that would deny, they say, no, I'm not Jewish, were the Israelis. You'd hear them say, I'm not Jewish, and then they would leave you, and you'd hear them talking Hebrew, right? But even then, the Israelis that they've been taught, there's no God, and there's no Torah, and there's no commandments, when they're under pressure, when they're under it, they're Jews, just like everybody else, even more. That's these people here, in the time of Achashverosh. They were enjoying the meal they wanted to leave Judaism, no problem. All of a sudden, they were under pressure. No, I can't deny I'm a Jew. So they pressured themselves. They were under pressure. They could just say, I'm not Jewish. Suddenly they screamed out. They realized that being Jewish is something very important. At least it's very important to Haman. He's willing to kill all of them. So, and they screamed out, why did Haman want to kill all the Jews? Why? What did they do to him? Absolutely nothing. They were Jews. They were representatives of God, and they knew it. So therefore, the Jews screamed out. This was above understanding. But regarding God, which is God is above all our comprehension. So this screaming out of the Jewish people, this is like an animal, like a baby goat. Like King David said, I am like an animal with you. When I am with you, when I think about you, God, I'm realized that my greatest understanding, King David, it says, is a tremendous, King David was the father of King Solomon. King David, he said he understood everything. Nevertheless, I realize I'm just like an animal. Compared to everybody else, I'm the smartest. Compared to God, I'm like a goat. That's the whole secret of all these Kabbalists and these people that really know Kabbalah, that they realize that they don't really know anything. In front of God, they don't know anything. Just God gives them, graces them with a little bit of knowledge of some of the upper worlds. But their main thing is humility. That's what it means when their heart screams out to God. From this, they can come to this revelation of God, faith. That's the level of nighttime. That in the nighttime there still is hazeh. You're totally attached and aware of God, even in the nighttime, even when there's no logical reason to do so, even when there's no, how do you say, sensory impetus, whatever, the stimulation that God is creating. There's no holy temple and there's no big miracles going around. Exactly the opposite. The Jews are in the worst situation possible. Suddenly, that's when the Jews realize that there's the essence of God. In the nighttime, that's called a Laila Hazeh. Ketzon Latifcha, says like sheep to be slaughtered. There's a speaker in Chabad. I've heard him say this many times. His name is Friedman, excellent speaker. He's been speaking, I don't know, for 40 years, 50 years, a long time he's been speaking. Very talented. And I heard him, a couple of his speeches. Anyway, one of his speeches, he said that one thing we see in all of the literature and that's written about the Holocaust, said that he never came across one example of Jews in the Holocaust denying or regretting that they're Jews. Maybe there was, he said, but he never read it. He never read anybody saying, why are we Jews? And if there was a Jew to deny his Judaism, and deep down in his essence, it's impossible for him. I think I told you that the interview I saw, I don't remember if I saw it or I read it, and interviewed Trotsky. Trotsky was a Jew. He came from a Jewish family. What was his name? I can't remember, Bornstein or something like that. Anyway, and he was a Jew, and he was an atheist, a murderer. The man was a mass murderer. He was the head of the Red Army, and he was a total, atheist. And they asked him, and he said, "What about religion?" He said, "Well, I'm a total atheist. I'm a Jew." I said, "I guess you have to say that I'm an atheistic Jew." And he refused to deny his Judaism. This was the miracle of Purim. Bavel. This was like on the level of Babylon. The Jewish people had just returned from Babylon. Hisham Balal Hashem. There God confused everybody, but nevertheless, the one thing they were sure of was that they were Jews. And that was that scream that they screamed out to God from the essence of their soul, is that was made a revelation of God. That's Halayla. They were in darkness. Hazeh. That the person can be also, that's one situation. Then there also could be Beyomahu. What does it mean, Beyomahu? There can be in the day, it can also be Behu. Like it says, Lo Yom, Lo Loila, La'et Erev, or Bahavin. Okay, this means different things. Beyomahu can mean that even in the time of the Holy Temple, Beyom, it can also be who you can feel God is far away. Or it can also be that in the time of night, the exile, the deepest exile, nevertheless, Hahu, when God is third person, he's far away, nevertheless, there can be Bayom, there can be pure revelation of God. So that's what it says, that there's going to be a time which is between evening and morning, and in the time of evening, there's going to be light. This is from the prophecy of, excuse me 1 minute, this is from the prophecy of, 1 second, excuse me, Zaharia. The prophecy of Zaharia, chapter 14. Okay, can we continue a little bit? Yeah, let's go. That's the level of Amalek. Okay, this is sort of like a different topic, but really not. We'll start this and we'll continue it tomorrow. We'll go further also. Why a person is obligated to get drunk on Purim until he doesn't know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. You're supposed to get drunk. Why? We'll see. Tomorrow we'll do this. Nevertheless, what do we say? Why did Haman hate the Jews so much? What's the story? What they didn't do anything to him. They had nothing. Because of that, that was his downfall. Right? You wanted to kill all the Jews, and it ended that Mordechai was a Jew and he saved the king's life, and Esther was a Jew and that was the king's wife. If he would have just let the Jews alone, he would have been ruler. But he said he couldn't. It says he couldn't stand it. As long as he saw that there were Jews in the world, he couldn't enjoy any of his power or any of his success. It says why? Because he comes from the seed, the race, if you want to call it Amalek. Amalek. And Amalek, this is a nation that attacked the Jews as soon as they left Egypt. Immediately, they left Egypt, and they attacked the Jews also before they went into the land of Israel. And this is the nation that King David had to wipe them all out. Right? He tried to wipe King Saul, almost wiped them all out, except he left one of them alive, Agag. And from Agag came Haman. It says Hamana Agagi. This is a war. Amalek, Milchama, it's a war to Hashem from every generation. Because Shekol, Amim, all of the non-Jews, they come from Klipot or Midot Rot. It says the essence of the non-Jews, they come from what's called bad. What does it mean, bad? They don't have no connection to God. By the non-Jews, connecting to God is a secondary thing to them. They have their life and they connect to God. And all of their religions for the non-Jews are also based on their own selfish needs. I want to go to heaven. So the non-Jews, they feel themselves. That's what's called midot ra. You look in the Tanya, it says that's what's called bad. Bad means selfishness. Like it says, Achiti, Amori, Aprizi. These are the 7 nations that Abraham was promised 10 nations. These are negated with Kedusha. When holiness is revealed, all of these nations, they will surrender. Or because that'll be a better type of light from darkness. There's a whole Torah portion called Yitro. And Yitro, it says, he was the chief high priest of all the idolatry in the world. He knew all the idolatry in the world, and he was really sitting high. And suddenly he started having doubts what was going on. And when he heard about Moses and the Jewish people leaving Egypt and the splitting of the sea and the giving of the Torah and the war that they had with Amalek, so it said that Yitro, he changed. He dropped all of his religions, all of his spirits, all of his this, and he said, I'm only going to be surrendered to God, to the creator of the universe. God's creating me. Oh, why not be surrendered to him? It's not the God of the Jews. It's my God. God's creating me. Just the Jews are advertising this. It says all of the other nations are like Yitro when they see and feel godliness as they surrender to God. But the evil, the chutzpah, how do you call it? Brazenness and the selfishness of kol mirah, the essence of it, this is Amalek. Milcham al Hashem midor dor. This is a war against Judaism for all the generations. And it's a war of the Jews against this negative force, all the generations. He's chutzpah, because this Amalek is inside of us. It's inside of every Jew as well. This chutzpah, this, how do you say, egotism, audacious egotism. What does it mean, audacious? Audacious means that I can walk up to, let's say, Albert Einstein, and I can say, Albert Einstein, you're an idiot, you don't know anything, and I can spit in his face. I don't know anything about physics. I don't know anything about mathematics, nothing whatsoever. What do I know? I know that I can spit. He has a face, I've got a face. So I can spit in his face and say, I'm a better physicist than you. That's called chutzpah. I have absolutely no qualities of mathematics or wisdom or whatsoever, but I can make him look like a fool. That's called chutzpah. We can do the same thing to God. God forbid. We have no godliness, no holiness, no nothing, but I can go against God. That's Amalek. Amalek is the more that he sees God, the more he enjoys spitting in his face, going against him. How do you see God? The Jewish people. The Jewish people are the face of God. Therefore, this level of chutzpah, this audacious egotism, is malucha b'lo. It's called a king without a crown. In other words, ruling without any justification. Kikol, amiros, shorsham, all of the other bad character traits, they come from the body. They come from what's called this hide of the snake. And they can be in everybody. But this chutzpah, this audaciousness, and gasus, and thickness, how do you say, egotism, crassness, me'ainu, but where does it come to everybody? Who, mashkatuv, this is called machshavas Haman. This is the thought of Haman. Asher chashav al Yehudim, that he thought about the Jews. We can see this with Hitler especially. He hated the Jews. So some people will say, okay, so he hated the Jews, what do you care? He hated one race, but he killed everybody. He killed everybody. He just murdered people, murdered innocent people, Russians and Finnish people and Belgium and France and Poland, just killed innocent people for absolutely no reason, right? Maybe his inner hatred was against the Jews, but he hated life in general. How many Germans did he kill? He killed his own people. Chashav al Yudin. That's the thought of Haman. Hainu yacholas a klipa. This is the ability of what's called klipa, which is called Haman. Who mashpia machshavos gasos. This is the source of all thoughts of destruction and audacious. Evil. How do you get rid of something like that? The only way you can do is to fall in front of his face, to fall in front of his feet, the feet of God. Hainu, namely, what's this feet of God? These are the angels. The angels are called God's feet. Like it says, Seraphim omdim mimal. It says that there's angels, burning angels that are standing. The Karoshim omdim. It says like in the tabernacle, there were boards that were standing. That's what it is. Tifkan lavir machshavas hara. That you can say, I'm so far away from God, but at least there's powers of good in the world, right? At least there's some sign of God in the world. That we can call God angels, God's angels. That's what it means. V'talo otovet banav ala eitz gavua chamishim amo, like it says Hashem melech geus levish. So the lowest aspect of God that we see in the world, at least the little hint that we have that God exists, we can throw ourselves down to that aspect and say, God, please save us, help us. And then what happens is that the evil is taken and reveals the highness of God. That's why it says that Haman was hung 50 amas high, which we're going to explain this more, God willing, tomorrow. But the point is the total surrender, no matter how low you are, one prayer can shoot a person up to the highest of heights and get rid of the highest. A person can think, a person like me, it's impossible. I can never become holy. I'm too defiled. And you're right. You can never do it, but God can do it. And if you call out to God, then God can take anybody out of the worst situations that he is possibly in the world. But you can be the Pope or something. I don't know if there's anything lower than that. And you can call out to God, please save me. Get me out of this idolatry. Get me out of this hatred that I have. And all of a sudden, it works. And that's the message of the Megillah, and that's the message of Judaism to the world. Now let's learn the Sikha of the Rebbe about how 770 is the holy temple outside of Israel.